Hey there, whoever's reading this. I'm not the type to post my personal life on the internet, but after what happened, I need to put it somewhere. Maybe for closure. Maybe to warn someone else before they end up like me. It all started with silence. Not yelling, not fighting, not even the typical cold shoulders couples give when they're annoyed. Just silence. Thick, calculated, deafening silence. My wife, Chelsea, stopped talking to me. No explanation. No fight. No dramatic scene. Just stopped. One day, she came home from work, walked right past me like I wasn't even there. And that was it. Like I'd turned invisible in my own home. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Her job at the marketing firm had been eating her alive lately, and she mentioned a few deadlines that had been making her cranky. So, I gave her space. I made her coffee in the mornings like always. I folded her laundry. I even left little notes on her pillow. Hope today's better. I'm here when you're ready to talk. Love you. I thought she'd come around. She didn't. Days turned into a week. A week turned into two. Still no word. Not a glance. She'd eat dinner alone, go to bed early, and leave before I even got up. I felt like I was haunting the house. Every little sound echoed off the walls like a reminder that something was terribly wrong. And then came the red flags I didn't want to admit were red flags. One morning, I noticed she had changed her phone password. Now, I'm not the snooping type. Never have been. But the timing? Weird. Especially since she used to leave her phone everywhere. Then there were the long evening walks she suddenly started taking. Always right after dinner. Always dressed a little too nicely for just clearing her head. I followed her once. I know how that sounds, but I had to know. She walked 3 blocks and got into a black car waiting at the corner. It wasn't an Uber. I stayed up that night. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock tick past midnight, then 1 a.m., 2:30. She didn't come home until almost 4 o'clock. She slipped into bed like she'd been out buying groceries or something. No explanation. No acknowledgement of the time. Just silence. The next morning, I sat at the table, staring at my cereal like it had the answers I was missing. She walked in, poured herself coffee, didn't say a word, and left. Not even a glance. Not even a fake good morning. I felt my chest tighten. Not out of anger, out of disbelief. Out of fear that maybe, just maybe, I was being played for a fool and refusing to admit it. That day, I checked our shared credit card statements. I knew it was a breach of trust, but at this point, I didn't know what trust even meant anymore. And there it was, dozens of charges I couldn't explain. Fancy restaurants in parts of town we never went to. Hotel bars. Even a boutique jewelry store I hadn't stepped foot in. But the worst part? A reservation for a couple's massage at a spa. 2 weeks ago. The same weekend she claimed she was visiting her sister in Denver. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling on the keyboard. I wasn't just being ghosted by my wife. I was being replaced. But I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. I needed answers. I needed the truth straight from her mouth. I needed her to look me in the eye and say whatever it was she was so determined to keep buried in silence. That night, I tried again. I made dinner. I lit a candle. I put her favorite music on, the soft jazz stuff she used to play on Saturday mornings. She walked in, looked around like she'd stepped into the wrong house, and said nothing. Not even a smirk. Just grabbed a plate and started eating. "Chelsea," I said gently, "please talk to me." She didn't look up. Just chewed slowly and took another bite. I tried again. "Is there someone else?" She paused, fork halfway to her mouth, and then continued eating like I hadn't said a word. That was the moment I knew. I didn't need her to admit it. Her silence was louder than any confession could ever be. But I still didn't leave. I don't know what was wrong with me. Maybe I thought I could fix it. Maybe I was afraid of being alone. Maybe I just wasn't ready to let go of the life we'd built, or at least, the illusion of it. But then came that morning. The morning everything changed. And believe me, what happened next? You won't see it coming. The morning it all unraveled didn't begin with a bang. No slamming doors. No arguments. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the smell of fresh rain outside. I got up like I always did, more out of habit than hope. Chelsea had already been up. The coffee pot was warm, but she wasn't in sight. Her car was still in the driveway, though. I figured maybe she was in the shower or upstairs pretending I didn't exist. I poured myself some coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Everything looked too normal, and that made it worse. The little salt shaker shaped like a penguin, the one we picked up on our first road trip, sat right next to the napkin holder. Her favorite mug, the one with the chipped rim she never let me toss, was drying on the rack. Everything looked just the way she liked it. But she didn't care anymore. That much was clear. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling, not out of interest, but just to feel connected to something. That's when I heard the front door open. Not forcefully, just casual, like someone letting themselves in. I froze. Chelsea never used the front door in the morning, and I hadn't heard her leave. Then came the voice, male, low, and annoyingly comfortable. You seriously haven't told him yet? I felt my pulse spike. I'm not ready. Chelsea replied from the hallway. Her voice wasn't cold like it had been with me. It was soft, almost flirtatious. He's still here. The air in my lungs turned heavy. I stayed completely still, not because I was afraid, but because my brain refused to catch up with what my ears had just heard. Another man. In my house. Talking to my wife. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a sound. I sat there like a ghost as they walked right into the kitchen, laughing. He froze when he saw me. Mid-laugh. Chelsea did too. And for the first time in weeks, she finally spoke to me. Oh, that's all she said. Oh, not let me explain. Not I'm sorry. Just that tiny, careless sound that hit me harder than a slap to the face. The guy was tall, probably early 30s, beard trimmed, dressed in one of those faux casual button-ups that try too hard. He looked at me like I was the one intruding. I stood up slowly. My coffee was still steaming. My hands were steady, even though my heart wasn't. Who is he? I asked, voice calm, weirdly calm. I wasn't even angry. Just empty. Chelsea glanced at him, then back at me. This is Daniel, she said, like she was introducing a coworker at a barbecue. We've been seeing each other. I nodded. Just once. No questions. No tears. Just the raw confirmation I'd been too afraid to admit to myself. How long? I asked, though I already knew. She hesitated. A few months. Daniel spoke up, clearly not sensing how thin the air had gotten. I didn't know you were still living here, man. I thought she. I raised my hand slightly. Not to threaten, just to make him stop. Then I turned back to Chelsea. And the silence? That was your way of easing me into this. She blinked like I'd just spoken in another language. I didn't know how to say it, she muttered. You didn't have to say anything. I replied, my voice lower. You already said everything by pretending I didn't exist. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just walked past them, out the back door, and into the early morning fog. My shoes got soaked in the wet grass, but I didn't care. I stood there for a long time. Then I turned around, walked back in, and said the words that flipped everything upside down. I won't fight you, Chelsea. I won't stay where I'm not wanted. But you'll be out of this house by the weekend. She blinked, confused. Wait, what? I own it, I said, picking up my phone. Title's in my name. You want to play house with Daniel? Do it somewhere else. I watched her face change. The confidence cracked. Daniel took a step back. And just like that, the silence was finally broken. But what happened over the next few days? That was the real storm. The next few days didn't feel like real life. They felt like a strange play I wasn't cast in. Just someone who stumbled onto the stage mid-performance. And honestly, I stopped trying to make sense of it all. I didn't talk to Chelsea again. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. That would have made it easier for her. To see me lose control and tell herself he was always unhinged anyway. No, I gave her nothing. Instead, I got to work. I took 2 personal days from my IT job and started clearing things out, not out of spite, but because I realized this place wasn't home anymore. Not for me. The photos on the wall. Lies. The souvenirs on the shelf. Echoes. I packed up my essentials and moved them to the guest room downstairs, which I started locking when I wasn't in it. I even installed a new deadbolt on the inside. Call it petty, but it was mine. And Chelsea? She didn't leave. She still slept in our bedroom, with Daniel. Like I was some temporary tenant crashing in the basement. Every morning I'd hear them. Their footsteps. Their voices. Their plans. But what made my skin crawl wasn't the cheating. It was how casual they were about it. One morning, I overheard Daniel say, "He'll be gone soon, right?" Chelsea replied, "He's just being dramatic. He'll come around." Come around? I sat on the floor of the guest room, surrounded by half-filled boxes, and stared at the walls like they might split open and give me an answer. What exactly did she think would happen? That I'd wait my turn? I started sleeping with noise-canceling headphones. I ate out most nights, just to avoid seeing them. And every time I came back, Chelsea acted like I was some awkward Airbnb guest overstaying his welcome. No confrontation. No guilt. Just boredom. Like she was tired of waiting for me to collapse. But here's the thing. I wasn't collapsing. I was calculating. See, while she was busy playing house with a man who wore cologne louder than his thoughts, I was digging into the one thing she didn't expect, our finances. We didn't have joint accounts, thankfully. She'd insisted years ago on financial independence. That decision, once a point of tension, became my saving grace. But we did have shared assets. The house. A cabin up north. An old SUV in her name but paid off with my money. And oh yeah, the startup fund I'd quietly put aside for her idea to launch a handmade jewelry business. A business that never materialized. She spent the money. All of it. That part hurt. Not because I needed it back, but because it was supposed to be for us. Still, I said nothing. I needed her to believe I was still broken. Still in limbo. Still weak. One afternoon, Daniel knocked on the door to the guest room. I didn't answer. He knocked again. Hey, man. Chelsea said you might be moving out soon. Just wondering if you had a date in mind. I opened the door just enough to look at him. He had that smug, performative concern written all over his face. I smiled. Don't worry, Daniel. You'll get your space. Just not in the way you think. Then I closed the door. That night, I sent Chelsea a text. We need to talk. Alone. Tomorrow morning. Kitchen. 7 a.m. She didn't reply. But she showed up. What she didn't know. I had already hired a property attorney. I had already filed the paperwork. I had already bought a new apartment. And I had already started something that would make her morning far more interesting than she could imagine. The next part of this story? Let's just say Chelsea thought she knew everything about me. She didn't even know the half of it. The sun hadn't even cleared the horizon when I sat down at the kitchen table, dressed in a clean shirt, fresh shave, coffee in hand. I didn't look like someone falling apart. I looked like a man who had finally made a decision. And that, in itself, changed the air in the house. Something in it had shifted. Chelsea walked in wearing his hoodie. Not mine. His. The sleeves swallowed her hands, and the look she gave me was somewhere between cautious and annoyed. Like I had ruined her morning. She didn't sit down. Just leaned against the counter like she was bracing herself. So, I looked at her. Just looked. And for the first time in weeks, I saw it, not the woman I married, but the version she became when nobody was watching. A version I never would have guessed existed if I hadn't lived through this bizarre, quiet nightmare. I won't waste your time, I said calmly. This house, it's no longer your home. You'll leave it by the end of the week. Her jaw twitched. You can't just. I can. And I have. I slid a folded letter across the table. She didn't take it. I kept talking. My lawyer already filed for ownership enforcement. It's in my name. You'll get your share in the divorce, don't worry. But you'll get it from somewhere else. She laughed. Actually laughed. You're finally growing a spine, huh? I stood up. Not angry. Not rattled. Chelsea, I let you humiliate me in my own home, in my own silence. You brought a man into this house while I slept a floor beneath you. I'm not growing a spine. I'm taking back what's mine. That landed. Her smile dimmed. For the first time, she blinked fast like she was recalibrating. Where am I supposed to go? She said, but her voice wasn't pleading. Just annoyed. That's not my concern anymore, I replied. You gave that right away the moment you decided I was furniture. And then something unexpected. Footsteps. Behind her. Daniel. Wearing my slippers. I almost laughed, but the moment was too bitter for humor. He froze when he saw me standing there. Didn't know this was a thing, he said awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. It isn't, I answered. Because you don't belong here. And she won't for long. Chelsea opened her mouth, but I cut her off. I won't make a scene. I won't humiliate you in front of friends or coworkers. I won't even post about it online. But make no mistake, your actions come with consequences. You get 7 days. After that, I will consider any presence of yours here as trespassing. Daniel spoke again. You're just going to kick her out like that? After everything? I turned to him slowly. You mean after she cheated? Lied? Stopped speaking to me and used this house like it was a hotel with maid service? Yes, I am. He took a step back, looking at Chelsea. You didn't say it was like this. She didn't reply. I turned away, picked up my coffee, and said one last thing before leaving the room. Oh, and you might want to check your bank account today. I canceled the subscription you've been secretly using on my old card. The one you thought I didn't know about. Her head snapped up. You? Enjoy the week, I said, walking away. I closed the door to the guest room behind me. Not to hide. Not to sulk. But because the game was finally over. The show was done. The curtain had fallen. They could have each other now. That was never the problem. The problem was, I finally stopped pretending I didn't see what they were. But the most shocking moment? That still hadn't happened yet. Let me tell you what happens when you give someone 7 days to leave a life they've grown too comfortable in. They panic in stages. First comes the smug disbelief. Then comes bargaining. Then silence. But silence doesn't hit the same when you're the one being pushed out. The first 2 days? Chelsea acted like I was bluffing. I'd catch her scrolling on her phone in the living room, feet up like she was waiting for a movie to start. Daniel, meanwhile, stayed away. Whether out of guilt, fear, or pure awkwardness, I didn't care. He vanished. On the 3rd day, she tried being nice. She knocked on the guest room door with coffee. Said we should talk. I opened it, took the mug, closed it without a word. Didn't drink it. Just left it on the windowsill until the steam faded and the silence returned to its rightful place. Day 4, she broke the calm. You really think you're going to be the good guy here? She asked while I was loading laundry, pretending not to hear her. You think people will feel sorry for you once they know the whole story? I turned slowly. Chelsea, I'm not telling anyone the story. I don't need to. They already see who you are without me saying a word. She blinked, caught off guard by how little venom I had left. The truth is, when someone drains you dry, there's no anger anymore. Just clarity. That night, I received an email I wasn't expecting from her sister, Mara. Subject line, I didn't know. I'm sorry. Turns out Chelsea had told everyone I'd left her emotionally years ago. That I was cold, disconnected, boring. She'd been painting me as a ghost husband to justify everything. But Mara, who always had a sharp nose for lies, said she knew something was off the second Chelsea brought Daniel to Thanksgiving as her business consultant. She didn't say much more, just that she was sorry, that I deserved better, and if I ever needed a place to crash, her door was open. I didn't reply, but I stared at the message for a long time. Day 5, Daniel came back. Not alone. I heard voices in the hallway, hushed but tense. I peeked through the guest room door. A man in a dark windbreaker handed Daniel something. They shook hands and left. An hour later, Chelsea stormed into the garage with a trash bag and a hammer. I stayed back, watching through the slit in the blinds. She shattered the framed print we'd gotten in Sedona, the one with our wedding date etched beneath the skyline. Then she sat in the driver's seat of the old SUV and just cried. Not the loud, dramatic sobs. The quiet kind. The kind you try to hide, even from yourself. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel anything. Day 6, she knocked again. This time, she wasn't holding coffee. She was holding her old engagement ring. I thought you might want this back, she said, barely meeting my eyes. I took it, not because I wanted it, but because it symbolized what used to matter and what never would again. No hard feelings? She asked quietly. I shook my head. I just feel nothing, Chelsea. Not love. Not hate. Just done. She left the hallway without another word. On the final morning, day 7, she was gone. No goodbye. No last look. No closure. The house was quiet, but not in the way it had been before. This silence felt earned, like a wound had finally stopped bleeding. But just when I thought it was over, I opened my front door and found a yellow envelope on the mat. No stamp. No handwriting. Just a folded piece of paper inside. And what it said changed everything I thought I knew about Daniel. And Chelsea, let me rewind for a second. You ever look at something so ordinary, an envelope, a napkin, a sticky note, and somehow know it's going to change your life? That's exactly what this was. A pale yellow envelope. No stamp, no handwriting. It was sitting on the welcome mat like it had been gently placed there, not dropped. That part stuck with me. I brought it inside, sat down at the kitchen counter, and stared at it for a while. I thought maybe Chelsea left it. Some weird farewell letter. Or a final attempt at spinning the truth into one last dramatic monologue. But when I opened it, my chest tightened. No greeting. No signature. Just one sentence on a single sheet of printer paper. She wasn't the only one. That's all it said. Nothing else. I stared at it so long that I didn't notice the sound of a car engine outside until it was already fading down the street. I rushed to the window, just in time to catch the tail end of a black sedan pulling away. Tinted windows. Out-of-state plates. I didn't recognize the vehicle. Definitely not Daniel's. The logical part of my brain screamed, ignore it. It's a joke. Trash it. But my gut said something very different. I poured myself a drink, something I hadn't done in weeks, and sat down with the note again. Who wrote this? And what exactly did it mean? Who else? There were no answers that night, but the questions wouldn't let me sleep. The next morning, I drove to the storage unit Chelsea used to rent before we got married. She'd never officially closed it, just emptied it out, she claimed. But I'd recently seen a charge for it still coming out of her account. I had the spare key, the one she gave me back when she still trusted me with her world. The unit door creaked open, and inside was a time capsule. Boxes with old photos, clothes, trinkets. But something caught my eye immediately, a locked metal file box shoved beneath a pile of winter coats. The lock was flimsy. I pried it open with a tire iron from the car. Inside? Documents. Receipts. And a phone. A second phone. I turned it on. No passcode. It was all there: messages, photos, call logs. But this wasn't between her and Daniel. This was someone else. Someone named Reed. I scrolled, stunned, through months of messages between Chelsea and this man. They started before Daniel ever showed up. Some of the messages were sweet, but most were transactional. Reed wasn't a boyfriend. He was something else. A favor for a favor type of relationship. He paid her. In cash. For what? I didn't want to guess. But it wasn't affection. Photos started appearing. None explicit, but all suggestive enough to put my stomach in a knot. I dropped the phone on the concrete floor and backed away from the box. What was this? Was Daniel just a distraction? Was Reed the real story? Had she been leading a double life long before the silence started? I drove home without the box. I left everything there, locked the unit behind me, and didn't look back. That evening, I called Mara, her sister. I didn't want to, but I had to. Did you ever hear of someone named Reed? I asked carefully. Long pause. You need to leave it alone, she said finally, her voice low. Just let Chelsea go. You know who he is. Another pause. I only met him once, she whispered. He's not someone you want to get involved with. Then why was she? I don't know, Mara replied. But whatever it wasn't love. Click. She hung up. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the envelope again. She wasn't the only one. It didn't mean Chelsea wasn't the only one cheating. It meant she wasn't the only one involved. In whatever this was, whatever I thought my marriage was, whatever I thought the betrayal looked like, this was something else entirely. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. You ever sit in your own house and feel like a stranger in it? Not because someone else lives there, but because you finally realize that you never really knew where you were living to begin with. That's where I found myself, alone, on the living room floor, staring at my wedding photo and wondering if anything in it had ever been real. But let me be clear, I wasn't spiraling. This wasn't a breakdown. It was something worse, clarity. And once you start seeing the truth without the filters, you can't unsee it. After discovering the phone in the storage unit, the messages, the name, Reed, the quiet warnings from Chelsea's sister, I started retracing everything. Not just her recent behavior, but mine too. What I'd overlooked. What I'd excused. What I'd convinced myself wasn't important. And one thing stood out. 3 years ago, Chelsea disappeared for 4 days. Claimed she was at a digital marketing retreat. No signal, no service, deep in the woods kind of thing. I believed her. Even told her to enjoy the break. I dug into my old files and found the receipt. I'd paid for the trip myself back then. But when I looked up the name of the resort, something didn't add up. It had closed permanently, 5 years ago. I called the number listed anyway, just to confirm. Disconnected. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some fling. This wasn't some midlife crisis. There was an entire fabrication underneath our life, and I'd just been living on the surface of it like a fool. Later that night, I took the second phone, the one from the storage unit, and searched through the oldest contacts. One number stood out. No name. Just saved as locked. Curiosity 1. I texted from a burner I'd picked up that afternoon. She's gone. I found the phone. Within 10 minutes, I got a response. Meet me tonight. Midnight. Harbor Lot B. No name. No voice. Just a location. I stared at it for a long time. I knew better than to go. I should have turned the phone in. Called someone. Pretended none of this had ever landed in my lap. But I couldn't. I had to know who or what Chelsea had entangled herself with. The harbor was empty when I arrived. Just the sound of water slapping against the docks and the buzz of one flickering lamppost over the gravel parking lot. I waited. Then, a silver SUV pulled up. Tinted windows. Slow stop. The driver didn't get out. Instead, the back window rolled down just a crack. Get in, came a voice, male, calm, practiced. I didn't move. Who are you? A pause. You don't know what she got involved in, he said. You're lucky she's gone. Don't look for her. I stood still. I'm not looking for her. Another pause. Then, the voice dropped lower. Then stop asking questions. The window rolled back up, and the SUV backed away into the dark. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I found my house keys in the mailbox. Attached was a note. You were right to walk away, but stay gone. No signature. No trace of Chelsea. No more Daniel. Nothing. It was like they vanished, together or separately, I'll never know. And in that silence, deeper than before, sharper than loneliness, I realized something. The betrayal wasn't the worst part. It was the secrecy. The lives lived behind curtains I never thought to open. And yet, through it all, there's still one final twist you wouldn't believe. Because someone came back. And it wasn't her. 3 months passed. The seasons shifted. The air warmed. The days grew longer. And with them, something inside me slowly thawed. Not the love I once had. Not the heartbreak. Not even the confusion. What surfaced was something quieter, steadier. Peace. I didn't hear from Chelsea again. Not a call. Not a letter. Not a lawyer's notice. Nothing. Just absence. Like a chapter ripped out of a book I no longer needed to read. At first, I thought I'd feel lost. But instead, I felt like I could finally breathe. No more whispering around corners. No more guessing games. No more pretending the silence between us didn't scream louder than words ever could. I moved out of the house shortly after. Sold it. Donated everything tied to memories that didn't belong to me anymore. And I didn't look back once. Instead, I rented a place in a small coastal town, one of those sleepy communities where people know your name within a week. Where the barista remembers how you take your coffee. Where the neighbors wave just because. And somewhere in that quiet rhythm, I rediscovered things I'd forgotten I loved. I rebuilt old hobbies. I started running again. I started laughing again, not the kind people fake at work meetings, but real, stupid, sudden laughter that sneaks up on you when life stops hurting. But the most unexpected part? It was a woman named Elise. We met at the local library, of all places, reaching for the same copy of a worn-out travel memoir. She smiled. I apologized. We both laughed at the cliché of it all. But it wasn't a movie moment. It was something better, real. She was gentle, but honest. Grounded. No games. No hidden motives. Just a woman who had gone through her own heartbreak and still managed to carry herself with grace. She didn't fix me. I didn't fix her. But we found something in each other, something simple, something sincere. And as strange as it sounds, I'm grateful for what happened. For the silence that tore everything down. For the betrayal that cracked my world open. Because it made space for this. For mornings that begin with actual conversation. For dinners where we don't have to guess what the other is feeling. For shared glances that don't hide anything. For a life that finally feels like it belongs to me. So, to anyone out there who's drowning in the quiet, who's watching their world unravel in slow motion, know this. Sometimes the collapse is the beginning, not the end. And walking away? It might just be the moment you walk toward everything you deserve.